challenges into opportunities. So, Luca?
Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, I'll present from there. Because I know I don't want it to be. Okay, so for so long. Today we're going to talk about AI and data in the space of cosmetics and clean beauty specifically. And to do that, because I'm aware that not every one of you guys work in this space, I'll do a little bit of presentation on how the brain works and apply that to clean beauty and show you some of the things that we can interact with AI. And I like to start this slide with saying that before making a product, you need to tidy a little bit your house. So before making a clean product, you need to use clean data. And maybe you'll see how it's going to come into play. That's a presentation I've given as well to a French audience, so that play on word is not going to work in English. But this is typically what I see or how I visualize when I go and talk to people in labs, for example, would that be big companies or small companies. Everyone wants to do AI, but when you open the door, it's a big mess. And the first step before doing anything is actually tidying everything. It takes a bit of time. It's painful. Unfortunately, you have to do it because without that starting point, you can't do more magical stuff and you get stuck into doing manual activities forever. And I'll present that into 5 different points. It's going to be, do you have a bit of time for Q&A as well? Okay, great. So I'll tell you how the brain works. And I'm not a neurosurgeon, so don't worry, I'm not going to go into big depth, but I like to do presentation by analogies, and I'll show you how AI, the mechanisms behind that on simple models. I'll tell you about a model that I've created. It's called the Mentor-Ray syndrome. And I know it's a little bit weird and a bit strange as a name, but you'll understand what it means. And then we'll talk about AI and what it means to apply that to cosmetics. Now, this is how our brain works, right? The way we receive everything and the way we make decision is set up in this way. We always have a bit of work. And who has seen this before? It's called the information pyramid. Have you seen this before? Usually there's 2 pyramids that we see in all the presentation. The pyramid of needs and the information pyramid. That's the one that I like the most. So our brain, that's how our brain processes everything. We have big sets of data. We start finding patterns in terms of information. Over time, we collect expertise and generate insights. And then we go into wisdom and action. And the slight difference is when you move from data to information to knowledge, the reality is everything is happening in the past, right? So you've collected all those small data points, you're starting to put them together, but this is all past information. The only thing they need to look at, is what every single brand does when they project to do a product launch, is the only action that happens in the future. Now, what is interesting is the way our brain processes information, the brain wants to have something that is pragmatic, efficient, increase the chance of success, but anything that we will do in the future in a predictive mode will always bring room for error. By the time you start formulating a product and you want to launch in, I think nowadays it's 12 to 18 months, the regulation would have changed 600 times, right? So there's always this level of risk, and actually having a process that is more efficient and faster on the upfront side will reduce the risk and help you being more efficient and impactful on the future side. Now, I've told you about the Mentor-Ray syndrome, and I'll explain what the Mentor-Ray syndrome based on actually the challenges that we see in the beauty industry, especially when we look into clean beauty. So what I've done is I've reused that model and reapplied that into the pressure that the industry is currently facing right now. From a data point of view, every single brand, would that be big or small, is being asked to integrate more and more data in everything we do, right? So we've heard about data on impact on environment just before. We're looking into analysis of formulas, then we start talking about let's say titanium dioxide or mica on sourcing and particle site distribution, things that we never asked before. US hasn't changed the regulation for decades, and now ask everyone to do that in a matter of 3 months. With MOCRA, the new FDA regulations, allergens moving from 26 to I think about 87 products, talks in groups. I mean, I'm not going to be listing over that, but the requirement that we have from a data point of view has been multiplied. From an information point of view, we're also now required to provide much more information in everything we do. I mean, when we had a PIF or a DIP, when we were starting to register a product, so your product information file, you had certain certifications to collect. Now the number of certifications and reports to provide has been multiplied. Why? More information lead to more data, lead to more information. And what's happening? More time, more resources, more money, what everyone is trying to be cleaner, faster, better. And now you start seeing the contradiction. And that's my favorite. Still, we've been asked to launch faster, cheaper, better, with all those constraints. So we've been told the process is too slow, we have only a very specific launch window, but also competition is becoming super aggressive. Everything now is being internationalized. You see the growth, expansion, acceleration of brands from Latin America, I see some first here from Korea, Chinese brand in the CBT is being super active, Europe trying to go to the US, and now you start having, I would say, a battlefield or playfield being very, very competitive, on top of all those constraints that you've been asked. So at this stage is like, where's the manta ray? I don't really see it. Well, actually, this is the last point. It's all good to have data from the past, but now we're also being asked to predict data for the future. Research agencies, alliances are starting to hint on things that will be required in 3, 5, 10 years down the line. You don't have the data? Well, I want you to think what may be the data you may need in a few years from now. And when I saw all of that and how the information pyramid got distorted in that shape, that's how I visualize that as the mentor. Someone saw it. Let me show you again. Now, to help with this, there's only 3 parameters you can play with. You change the people, you change the process, you change the product. Changing the people, you either recruit more people, you make them work faster or longer. Actually, that's what's happening now in a regulatory team, so we try to avoid that. You change the product, you become less innovative, you launch less things, you launch the same things. Now we start seeing a lot of recycling, and I'm not talking about recycling and upcycling that you'll hear about later. I'm talking about same product, just a different label, because we have no time and we don't want to take any risk and don't have the time to be innovative. Or you change the process, right? And actually with the help of AI and to address those main roadblocks and those 3 main levers, AI is actually helping not to replace, but to enhance every single one of those. The example I give for the person, the operator, the formulator, the person in regulatory, don't see AI as your enemy, but think of the image of Batman and Robin. You are Batman, you are the superhero, you're here to bring innovation, and AI is going to be your Robin and it's going to help you on your projects. The same for products. Maybe you can actually accelerate ingredients discovery, ingredients predictive performance, predictive hazard, predictive stability. And the same for the process. Things that were taking weeks before, can you shrink that to maybe seconds? Right? Actually, I'll show you some examples and the answer is yes. So any company could actually join the AI transformation. The problem I have today with AI and the way it's been communicated is everyone thinks that AI is like you need to be a Google or a Facebook. AI is actually much simpler. And we can take the same analogy as the information pyramid by storing your data, automating to generate informations, start to use that to do some prediction, and maybe generative AI, which is what everyone is starting to talk about. And what is very funny is, actually, the status quo is most of those companies, big, small and big, are using Excel documents and Google Drive. And actually, that's pretty good. But when you want to automate, interconnect, integrate, that's where it starts to become interesting. But at least there is the first step on digitization. We're talking to some colleagues. I've been in the industry for a few years, so I'm a bit old. And I still remember when we had our physical lab notebook, and we had to write them, have them signed, and your colleague had to countersign them. At least now we have Excel tables, so we can copy paste. But we can as well go to the next stage. And the next stage is storing data in a clean way to have what we call a one version of the truth, but also interoperability of the data, and more importantly, accessibility. This will help you show some of the things I'm going to share with you on automations and on prediction. So on the different applications, here's some of the things, and I guess today one of the objectives is not necessarily to sell good faith projects, but to illustrate via good faith projects some of the things that you've seen on automation. Launching a formula that is globally compliant is near impossible. And I'm not talking about regulation, I'm talking about compliance, especially in clean beauty. We have 6 levels. Country level regulation, because it was not complicated enough, countries like US have started to do state level regulation. You've heard of California Prop 65, there's Minnesota, Oregon, Hawaii, New York. Then you have retailers. In the US specifically, you can be okay FDA, but you may not be Ultra Clean or Clean at Sephora or Neiman Marcus or Bloomingdale's or the others. Above that, you have chemical groups or toxin groups. Now the plastics, pens, parabens, it's as well another layer where the consumers are starting to get worried and therefore the brands are starting to act against that. And the final layer is where brands start to have their own clean lists. Me as a brand, my vision is this, my ethics is that, and therefore I don't want this ingredients, I don't want that to have that family groups. And then beyond that you have the consumer standards like the Cosmos, the EWG, in France everyone talks about UCA, etc., etc., etc. And when you start combining all of those, you either do 2 things, and this is again talking to either people in industry or some of our customers. You either don't screen rigorously all the sources, or you start being slow or cutting corners. Right? And these are the things that we need to avoid, because at the end of the day, this could have an impact, both legal and on the safety side for our consumers. So in this example, I'll show you how you can screen a formula on 4 seconds. Just because the data has been stored digitally for all the different elements and data of compliance, and then you copy paste the formula, you press screen, and you get your result. 4 seconds is where my internet is not so good. And by the way, I can screen 500 formula and it will still going to take me 5 seconds. Actually, I did 113 compliance standard also in 4 seconds. So the difference between human brain and machine, then you start seeing how time does not behave the same for a machine and for a human brain. If you want to screen 3 countries for a human person, you're going to screen 1 country, then you're going to screen another country, and then you're going to screen a last country. The machine doesn't differentiate. You just put that in a big box, here's your data, it gives you the results. And the time that you save not having to do those tedious and complex tasks, you can then go and do more innovation, find new molecules, do more characterization, higher value and higher excitement activities. Here's the example when I screen actually 460 formula against the Gulf region, for example, again, 4 seconds. Now, that's automation and how you can do things at high scale and at high speed. What it will not do is replace a formulation or regulatory expert. It will just front load and automate some of the first activities so that the expert can say, yeah, business-wise, this is the next step and this is what we need to do. Here's another example. We've automated and screened about 250,000 products in North America, absorbed and clean all the ingredients lists and other information. What is great is when you formulate and you have your list of ingredients, you can then very easily see which ones are the products in market that are similar in terms of composition. So in this case, things that, by the way, people do manually, or they pay very expensive licenses and do manual work still to try to reverse ingredients, reverse raw materials, and find additional benchmark in the market. Again, you have clean data, you can do a lot of stuff. Another example, who has heard of this brand Proya from China? Proya is doing super well, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue last year. What everyone is doing but no one is saying is every single project from marketing starts with, this is my benchmark, I want the same but different. Everyone does that. And what happens is someone will look at the label, some people do that, I know. They look at the ingredients, they're a little bit exotic, and then they'll go to UL Prospector, and they'll try to redo that formula, right? That takes a lot of time, but also it's difficult for you to find complex combination of ingredients. So if your raw materials has 5 in key, how do you do that on UL Prospector? Well, you spend a lot of time, but you actually don't do it. But by having the right structure of the data and the right tool, you can start doing this. And down the line, you can also say, hey, you want to do that formula or something similar with that raw materials that is innovative that you've seen at a show? Maybe you should add those 3 other raw materials roughly in those concentrations. It will not give you the final solution, but it will start giving you some directions, and that's the time that you spend usually, to then go and explore and start to deliver the best stability, the best sensory, the best experience from the expertise from the formulators and the people in regulatory. And if we go to the predictive, everyone is talking about predictive stability, so I will not touch that, but I'm talking about other things. This is an exercise that we've done recently when we saw a publication in the news saying that aspartame was causing cancer. There's been a research that's been going on for years and years. And I just sent a note to my CTO and said, hey, what can you tell me about aspartame? I was like, well, if we look at the 7 million molecules that we've screened, now we've actually screened 140 millions, and we look at molecular similarities, this is kind of the hazard profile I can give you to aspartame. And H250 is exactly the same conclusion that you have from a hazard prediction. But that took us 24 hours. And also, could recommend, oh, by the way, if you're worried about aspartame, those are some of the cousins or similar molecules that you could look at that could be showing up in the future and down the line presenting similar issues. And that could be done in the 2 different directions. Either something that may be an issue down the line, or actually an ingredient that you want to replace and you want something better, but doesn't have the constraints of that specific molecule, so you can have a look at cousins and similar molecules that would have the advantages that you want from a function point of view, but not the disadvantage, for example, from a sourcing point of view. Usual examples in all the companies, capryllyl glycol, phenoxyethanol, etc., etc. Last example I'll share is also on tox and hazard prediction. EDTA is starting to be banned by a lot of retailers in the US. Do you guys know Credo Beauty, the retailer? Try to launch something at Credo Beauty and you have EDTA on your list, or actually so many other ingredients don't even apply because they won't accept your product. But what a lot of companies are doing, they're starting to use trisodio-methylenediamine diisocyanate as an isomer of EDTA, but actually much less. And that report from the Cosmetic Ingredient Review, CIR, is very recent, March 2023. When there is assessments of molecule, you need to have protocol, teams behind that, time to do that. And for the time that the whole research is being done, you in your lab are just currently waiting and see, should I even start my project using that ingredient or not? The approach that we look at is just parallelize that. Get some elements of prediction to give you a zone of comfort. And if the comfort index is high enough, start working on this until the CIR release their report. In this case, it's the EDTA and the isomer. You see the correlation you have on specific hazards and the score. The higher it is, when you start getting above 70-80%, it's highly correlated. and for that same criterion on the isomer, how much smaller it is, and roughly the conclusion is lining up with what the CRO is doing. Again, we're not here to replace people, we're here to save time, anticipate, parallelize activities, and when we talk about roadblocks specifically for clean beauty and sustainability, that's where actually the junction and the Batman and Robin approach could be something to consider that is not just accessible for very big companies, but also now thanks to modern tools with smaller companies. And we're not the only ones, there's other companies in the space, so at least embracing that and not having that defense mechanism that we naturally have when we hear about AI and I'm going to lose my job, just getting into the Batman and Robin mindset, that could be at least